All right, I'm going to make a lesson here about, video lesson about 7.6. We are talking about, well, 7.6 and 7.7 apply the sine, cosine, and tangent ratios. We are going to use these ratios to find sides of a right triangle today, okay? So the definition of a trigonometric ratio is the ratio of the length of two sides of a right triangle. These are the functions we're going to use. Sine on your calculator looks like sin. Cosine on your calculator looks like cos. And tangent on your calculator looks like tan. All right, here is another, it's a little bit, hold on, I'm sorry, I just don't want it to be off the screen. I'm sorry, this is not. Okay, the angle of elevation, I changed the definition a little bit from what I said in class because it was a little confusing. So if you think about the angle of elevation as the upwards angle from the horizon, from the horizontal line, sorry. This is the horizontal line. It's the upward angle of the line of sight from the observer. So this angle of elevation, this is looking up, okay? Then the angle of depression is the downwards angle from the horizontal line. There's the horizontal line up here, but now we're outside of that hypotenuse kind of, that's the line of sight from the observer. The thing to note about these is the angle of elevation, oh my goodness, the angle of elevation, the angle of elevation and the angle of depression are alternate interior angles. So they are congruent. We'll need to know that later on, not so much today, but we'll need to know that, okay? All right, now let's talk about these trigonometric ratios. This is the mnemonic we're going to use, SOHCA TOA. But while I want you to write it on every single piece of paper is SOHCA, the S stands for sine, and it's opposite over hypotenuse, right? The C stands for cosine, and that is adjacent over hypotenuse. And then we have the T that stands for tangent, which is opposite over adjacent. You might be thinking, well, that sounds so weird. Like, what are you talking about? Opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse. Like, I know I'm talking about a right triangle, but like, what? Okay, so I'm going to show you how to set up these ratios. First, this is just generic. We're not solving anything. So here in this first example, it says sine of A. Sine of angle A means I'm looking at this triangle from A. I'm coming into the triangle right here. And it's opposite over hypotenuse. First off, from angle A, opposite would be 8. The adjacent is the side that's not the hypotenuse, because the hypotenuse is always going to be the hypotenuse. Okay, so make sure you label your side from the given angle. So now sine of A is 8 over 17. We're just putting in the ratio. We're not solving anything. Okay, I'm just setting up this ratio. Ratio is just a fraction. Cosine from A. So cosine says adjacent over hypotenuse. So cosine from A is 15 over 17. And then tangent from angle A. Well, tangent is opposite over adjacent. So tangent from A, opposite over, not the hypotenuse, opposite over adjacent. So this is 8 over 15. Okay, that is all from angle A. All right, now, this second part here on your paper, you have, see how it says sine of B, cosine B, tangent B? Now we're coming in to the triangle from B, okay? So the only things that change are my opposite and my adjacent. So from angle B, 15 is now my opposite side, and 8 is my adjacent side. The only one that never changes is the hypotenuse. It's always going to be the hypotenuse. So from sine of B, opposite over hypotenuse, which is 15 over 17. Cosine of B, adjacent over hypotenuse, 8 over 17. And tangent of B is opposite over adjacent. Just setting up those ratios, okay? So just a little practice setting it up using the SOHCAHTOA mnemonic, okay? I want you to write that down, memorize that. That's going to be like your Bible. Now let's look at some examples here, okay? So we're going to find the values. First thing I want to do is I'm going to write SOHCAHTOA on the top of my paper so that I know what I'm doing, okay? In this triangle, they give us an angle. So that means we're coming into the triangle from here. Like we're looking at the triangle from that 38 degrees. And now let's label the parts of our triangle. Well, I know X is my opposite side, Y is my hypotenuse, and 8 is the adjacent side, okay? So at this point, you get to choose which variable do you want to solve. Do you want to solve for X or Y? Okay? So if you're saying X, I want to solve for X. Well, X is opposite. I can't use the hypotenuse because I don't have a value here. I need to have one side. I need one unknown and one side given. So that means I have to use adjacent to find X, which is opposite. Opposite adjacent, I'm like, oh, that's tangent. So tangent of the angle, 38 degrees, equals X over 8. All right, when the variable is in the numerator, we multiply. I'm going to multiply both sides because I want to get X by itself. I'm going to multiply both sides by 8. And now X equals 8 times tangent of 38 degrees. We're going to punch that in our fancy little calculator. You just type it right in, 8 tan 38. When you type in 8 tan 38, you should get a value. Now I lost my notes. All right, I'm just going to have to get my little calculator out and do it. That's okay. I'm okay with it. All right. 8 tan 38, enter. That gives me 6.3. Right, when I round to the nearest 10, so it's 6.25, that 5 makes that 3 go up. So this is 6.3. And I'm just going to write on the side here, X. This is 6.3. All right, now I want to find Y. Y is the hypotenuse. I really don't want to use this value of X because it's an abbreviation, like we rounded, it's not the actual number. So I'm going to use the side that's given again, okay? So I want to find Y, which is the hypotenuse, and I'm going to use the adjacent. Hypotenuse, adjacent, that means I'm going to use cosine. Hypotenuse, adjacent, H and A. So cosine of 38 degrees equals the ratio adjacent over hypotenuse, 8 over Y. Now I showed the class today that when the variable is in the denominator, we're going to divide, right? Variables in the numerator, we multiply. Variables in the denominator, we divide. I'm going to show you why. If I want to get Y by itself, first I need to multiply by Y on both sides, so I get rid of that fraction there. So now I have Y times cosine of 38 equals 8. I still want to solve for Y, so I'm going to divide both sides by cosine of 38. So now Y equals, because I got Y by itself, 8 divided by cosine of 38. Please don't use the ABC button. Make sure you use division. So you just take 8 divided by cos 38. Round to the nearest 10, and I get 10.2. That is what Y equals. So Y equals 10.2. All right, there's my answer. Boom, done. Love it. It's so good. All right, we found X and Y. 2 more examples here. All right, in this example, here I have an angle measure. I'm coming into the triangle here. Well, 10 is my opposite side. Y is my adjacent, my neighbor. And this is the hypotenuse. Remember, the hypotenuse is always across from that 90-degree angle. And we will never use trig functions with that 90 degrees, okay? So let's write our mnemonic, SOHCAHTOA. Okay, because we need to memorize that. It's very important. Now, what do you want to find? Let's find X first. If I want to find X, that's the hypotenuse, and I have opposite hypotenuse, I have to use sine. Sine of the angle equals opposite 10 over hypotenuse. 10 over X. Now remember, when the variable's in the denominator, we divide. They both start with D. So I'm just going to flip-flop sine 42 and X. I'm going to trade places. X equals 10 divided by sine 42. I bust out my fancy little calculator. I'm like 10 divided by in 42, that gives me 14.9. X equals 14.9. I'm so happy with that. Now let's find y. Here's y is my adjacent. I'm using the opposite adjacent. I have to use tangent. Tangent of 42 is opposite 10 over y. Again, the variables in the denominator, we divide. Y equals 10 divided by tangent of 42. 10 divided by tan 42 is 11.1. Okay, one more example to do. In this example, oh, look, we have a tree. All right, I have an angle of elevation here. That's what this 59 degrees is. This is the angle of elevation. We are going to look at this triangle, with quotes, from that angle and determine what is our hypotenuse, what is adjacent, what is opposite. Well, the height of the tree is opposite of the angle. 45 feet is the adjacent side, and then x would be the hypotenuse. All right, let's look at our fancy mnemonic. So, all right, now, you get to pick again. Let's do x since we found x first the whole time. So if I'm looking for x is hypotenuse. I have adjacent. Hypotenuse, adjacent. I have to use cosine. Cosine of 59 is equal to adjacent, silly goose, adjacent 45 over x. Right, variables in the denominator, we divide. X equals 45 divided by cosine of 59. All right, 45 divided by cosine of 59 is 87.4. 87.4, and now we have units here, so we're going to use units here. Okay, so let me write this in. X equals 87.4 feet. Now let's find h, which is the height of the tree. Okay, h is opposite. I have adjacent, opposite, adjacent. That's tangent. Tangent of 59 is equal to h over 45. All right, when the variable's in the top, we multiply. We multiply both sides by 45. So h equals 45 times tangent of 59. Again, we're going to round to the nearest 10. So 45 tan 59, that gives me 74.9 feet. It's a pretty tall tree. Okay, so h equals 74.9 feet. All right, and that's all there is to it, okay? So make sure you read the instructions and do your best. And I know that some of them say you have to use sine or cosine, but just use whatever makes sense to you. Start from the angle given. Label your parts of your triangle. You have to use the one given side, and then you pick which one is missing. All right, so here's your assignment for today. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you later.